Hey guys, welcome back to the Greenback Voyage podcast. We have a little bit of a special here today. If you recall, in our latest finance podcast, we were kind of beefing with each other about Israel and Palestine and what they should be doing with each other. And we thought for our next politics episode, we'd take a full in-depth enclosure on which stance is right. Should the U.S. voice its support for Israel or Palestine or whatever? Should this fighting continue, and which side do we ultimately support? Now, of course, I'm on the side of neutral. We have Joel, one of our co-hosts. He's on the side of Israel, and Krishna on the side of Palestine. And, we thought that wasn't enough. So we brought on some additional guests with us. We have David here with us. You want to say hi, David?
Hello. Thanks for having me.
All right. Along with that, we have Aldrich.
Hey, guys. Thanks for bringing me on.
And lastly, we have Khan Mazar.
What's up? Thanks for having me.
All right. So right now, our sort of idea is that, Joel and David are pro-Israel. Krishna and Aldrich are pro-Palestine. And Khan is just going to support whichever argument he thinks suits his values. So we're just going to go from there, and we're going to get straight into it. Who do you think is right? With all the ceasefire that's happened recently and everything that's happened in the past 2 weeks, what do you think is the right approach? And who do you think is in the right?
So hear me out, okay? So no side is explicitly right or wrong. Because if you look at the historical timeline of the entire conflict, every side has made their own fair share of mistakes. What I'm trying to say is Israel's current provocations within the region are completely wrong. I'm not citing any sort of history because I'm not concerned with that. What I'm advocating for is Israel's aggressive stance against Palestinian individuals right now, and the amount of harm that's being done to these individuals is something I do not support, and I always want to mention that Palestinians also need to be heard in this conflict. What's happening right now is a majority of the world ganging up on these people, and they're kind of losing their voice, and it's very forceful. So I feel like they should be allowed free speech, and kind of their ideas need to be heard, because a lot of Palestinians actually want a secular land where they can coexist with the Jews. It's not necessarily an extremist perspective. That's for most Palestinians. And if you look at a lot of Jews, they're growing increasingly Zionist because of all the polarization that the government's causing. And the social media is not helping the perspective as well. So I think the two sides, there's a major imbalance of power, and we need to hear the Palestinian voice.
So when you say Palestine wants to have a secular state, right, and they want to coexist with Jews, that actually contradicts what you said. When you look at what the PLO, a lot of Palestinian judges are saying. So, the Temple Mount, right? That's where the Western Wall is. That's, part of Solomon's temple, right? That was destroyed twice. Mm-hmm. And there's also the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and that's where, that was the root cause of the recent problem. What Palestine is saying is that in that Temple Mount, in that compound which houses Israelis, Jewish holy sites, and Muslim holy sites, what Palestine is saying that Jews cannot pray there, that is Islam-controlled area, and Jews should not be allowed there, or Israel authority cannot be allowed there. What Israel is saying is that, no, we control that area. You guys can come pray. You guys can come, pray at your mosque. We go to our Western Wall. We can coexist, but that's not what Palestine is saying. So to be fair, it's not really a secular point, right?
Is it just me, or is he cutting out for everyone?
Yeah, he's cutting out for me too.
He's GG'd.
All right, well,
Bro,
going
even
off
his Wi-Fi doesn't agree with him.
Oh no.
we could go about a little bit more modern here and just talk about what I think is in the news a lot recently about the airstrikes into Gaza, right? Just to give a little context, after all these protests mounted in Israel and Palestine, Hamas, a terrorist group in Gaza, started sending missiles out trying to strike Israel. Specifically, in the first day, they shot 750 rockets In the days since, and this article is a day old, so take this with a grain of salt because there's more at this point. They flew 3,000 rockets, trying to fire them into Israel, They're actually unguided, so they're not very specific. The main goal is just to kill civilians, though. They're not going after really military targets.
The thing with Palestine's rockets are, most of them are not going to hit. Maybe one or two of them will, but Israel's got such a defense system.
That's completely inaccurate, by the way. 70% of their rockets fly over Israel's airspace. The reason why they don't hit is because Israel has an Iron Dome, which is 90% effective against Palestinian rockets.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. They have
so you're saying
that it doesn't do anything.
So you're saying that Israel should just take out their Iron Dome and let people die?
No, if you look at Palestine's situation, there's such a difference in power. They can't really do anything except strike back.
How about this?
They're like a rat backed into a corner. They got to strike back. And when they do, it obviously looks bad to them for the rest of the world.
Look,
but Israel's just so much more powerful. They can just sit back and just knock down the rockets.
All right, so going off that, I think we should specify that it's not all of Palestine that's firing these rockets. There's specifically
Hamas,
two areas I want to talk about, right? There's the West Bank, where the Palestine Authority is mostly set up, and there's the Gaza Strip, where Hamas is set up. In this Gaza Strip, it's been under blockade for a while, and economic conditions are obviously not very good because of this blockade. And Hamas has taken power there, and actually the Palestinian Authority and Hamas fought a civil war, so they're now officially two separate groups, right? So Hamas, it's theorized that Iran has been giving them.
It's not theorized. There's actually proof.
Yeah,
well,
Iran's always been backing Hamas.
All right, there's
Syria,
proof, right?
Iran
that
actually
Iran has been supporting Hamas and telling them how to actually make these rockets. But that's not really that relevant to the conversation. But basically, Hamas has just sent rockets after rockets after rockets, and Israel has to, in some way, respond. You can't do nothing because they're just going to send more rockets. A land invasion, while definitely possible, and they've done it before, would be quite costly. So the only other good option is really precision airstrikes. So you have to do these precision airstrikes to defend
David,
your country.
One other thing, right? You need precision airstrikes because what Hamas is doing is they're actually putting rocket launchers in school compounds, in near hospitals, in neighborhoods, in residential areas. So they're a complete terrorist organization. They're using humans as shields. 30% of their rockets actually land into Hamas and actually kill their own people. There's reports recently in this conflict as well where they killed their own people.
Actually, to back that up, from the New York Post, they said out of the 3,000 rockets sent, and again, this is a day old, 400 of them landed in Gaza. Right? Like, these rockets kind of suck. And they damage, and while the aim is to kill Jewish people, they've also been killing their own citizens.
Right.
No, I don't
this
think
can all be avoided.
perspective-
Look, let me just say this. This can all be avoided because what Israel said, right, is you can't form a military, you can't have arms, you can't smuggle arms, right, from any other country. You can't do any arms deal with any other country, and you guys can enjoy, the freedom. You guys can enjoy less pressure, and they already have passport citizenship, right? They will give them full liberties. Just don't form a military. Just don't get in arms. And and in the Gaza Strip, especially Hamas, they're violating those terms. Israel is not they don't want to just eradicate Gaza Strip. That's not what's happening here. And when they send an airstrike, they actually send like an Amber Alert to the people in the area like an hour before, and then they send a warning missile, and that's when they do an airstrike. So who's the aggressor here? The person who's sending 200, 300 constant missiles just to kind of like what is it?
Just to kill civilians, really?
Right. It's unguided missiles. It can land anywhere in that range.
Okay, but in any perspective,
Palestinian civilians have been killed.
Listen, no one is supporting Hamas, okay? Me and Aldrich, our perspective is not supporting a terrorist organization. Our perspective is when it comes to Palestinian people, a lot of injustice is being done. Let's talk a little bit about the mosque and the raids on the mosque, right? So, Joel, I believe we had a conversation about this where you told me that the mosque had COVID regulations, and the Israeli police essentially came in the religious site and tried to control the population there because there were overcapacity for COVID.
Yeah, it was like 70,000 people there.
Right? But hear me out. In no situation is it morally right to raid a place of worship. And dude, if you look at the videos, the Israeli police force came in like a SWAT team. Like, think about it in our home country of India, right? If you were praying in a temple or you were praying in a church, right, or a mosque, and an entire Indian SWAT team just swarmed in and started kicking you out with violence, I am not going to take it lightly. And as a place of worship, no. If you look at the videos, almost 100% of the cases, the Israeli police started with kind of dragging them out, and that naturally pissed people off, right? And I don't think that should be allowed in a place of worship. Like, sure, you can have COVID regulations, right? But there's a respectful way to make people leave. And that doesn't include, like, you know, allowing violence in there and raiding the place like a SWAT team. Like, that's just morally incorrect in any perspective you look at it.
So first of all, I don't think you can pinpoint just one video and just base your argument on that. All right. So it's a holy site. There's a lot of tensions. I'm pretty sure both sides started clashes in various points in that compound. All right.
Sure. I'm sure, but I'm saying Israel made the first move by. It's
of course,
all
they
about
made the
optics,
first move.
right?
They're trying to disperse the crowd.
Sure, but it's all about optics, right? The Israeli police can't walk into a religious site looking like a SWAT team with arms and things like that, heavy arms too. That's just disrespectful in any perspective. And you talk about how Israel is like okay with like Palestinians coexisting amongst them. That's not true, because if you look at the entire Israeli social media tactics, their whole perspective is to try to like just put the Palestinian citizens down. Right?
I think that
they're always
that just
talking
might
about
be,
come at us. It might be a strategy. I'm not sure, but
it's not a
optics,
strategy.
It doesn't
it's just
look very
mainly
good.
it's mainly the government that's forcing it. If it's not truly a belief that whatever the government perceives out there is what the citizens believe in. Because if you look at, I think this morning itself, there are a bunch of videos out there where Israeli settlers are protesting against Netanyahu and the government basically for allowing these attacks to happen, and they've been harassed. It's a lot like how U.S. citizens have been harassed in the past year over the BLM movements. So it's not like, you can't take the fact that all Israelis want to, squander Palestinians. Sure, there's videos out there where a lot of them are harassing them.
No, I'm saying it's a vocal majority. Like when you take to social
I don't know
media,
about
or when you look at people
majority.
in the press,
I think
would
it's
say
just
it's a vocal
more.
majority.
I think it's more half-half. I'd have to disagree with that.
And
I think
and
a
not
lot
just,
of them are just being suppressed. They don't want to say like we support or not support Palestine, but we just want to have a ceasefire. I mean, you can't really say that in an Israeli state where most of the population will probably attack you on the other side.
But that's not my only concern, right? When you look at Palestine as a location, right? These guys, when it comes to rockets, most of these guys are going fishing for trash like metal to make rockets, because the only way they can get arms is from the Middle East, right? Which is kind of like not very involved in the current time, right? You have Iran, but you don't have the rest of the Middle East.
A lot of their
Why are you
rockets,
making an argument
smuggled
where they need to get
through
arms?
No, I'm
Egypt.
saying Palestine right now needs some sort of way to defend themselves. I'm not saying Hamas is the solution.
What are they defending
I'm saying
themselves
the
from?
public- From Israel.
From Israel,
There's
obviously.
disproportionate amounts of violence right now, considering Palestine's tiny population compared to the Jews right
Can
now.
I have some
They have
specifics?
no arms
Because last week, 3 Israeli students were crossing the West Bank borderline and they got killed. Or one of them
Okay,
got 3 of them got
if you
shot,
look
one of
at
them
the
got killed.
proportions of Palestinian death to Israeli death, there's like 3 Israel students to 20 Palestinians. The proportions don't add up. There's a lot more Palestinians dying overall.
It's
Okay,
like
when
over 2,000
Hold
more.
on. Let's
Alright,
let
I mean, look.
Aldrich talk.
Okay,
Joe,
we
let's
could-
let
we
Aldrich
could-
talk,
Look,
and then
look,
we can.
when you have a conflict,
Joel,
when you have a
Joel,
conflict,
wait. You've
No,
talked a lot.
Let him speak. Let him speak.
All
let him
right.
speak.
No, okay, so you read the headlines and they say what Palestine has this much death toll and Israel only has like 10 or 12. That's a conflict.
No,
and
you can look at any chart, right? UN charts, you can look at UNICEF, right? All of these organizations give out statistics on this, and if you look at the proportion of Palestinian deaths to Israeli deaths, it's insane. You have like 20 people to 1 person dying in Israel.
dying of what?
I mean, the causes are not really mentioned. It's just the death
Well, that's
toll, the overall
that's
death
important,
toll.
isn't it?
I mean, wouldn't you assume it's from military action because that's what's happening?
The majority
you see a lot
of
of
it
people
is from
dying,
majority.
bro.
Yeah, majority of it is from just military disputes. Since 2008, 5,700 Palestinian deaths, including like over 1,200 children, and in that time, only 250 Israeli deaths. So you can kind of see
that
You want to explain it?
Humongous.
You want
Like,
an
it's not even
explanation for
close.
why Palestinian children are dying right now?
Why?
It's because Hamas is placing their Qassam rockets in schools.
Okay.
Yes,
but, like,
that's
you
the
realize
only
Palestinian
reason.
Students,
That's the
children have
only
also
reason.
died because of Israel, right?
What
Majority
Palestinian
of it is
students?
of Israel.
We could
It's not just
play this
Hamas
game-
just going
we
and
could play
nuking
this
every
game all
school.
day, right?
That
We
is
c-
true.
I,
That
I
is
could
true.
go out and say in 1945 there were between about 500,000 to 1 million Jews in the Arab world. Now there are 8,000. You know, we shouldn't play this blame game. I mean, people have died, right? But we should state like what each side is currently doing, and base our decisions off that.
Okay,
Right,
but
and the
David, I
numbers
wanna
show
hear
that
your perspective
currently that
under
the
settle
Israel-
tactics. Okay, so
I
I want to bring
think
up the
the
settling.
settlements are wrong, right?
Yeah,
Like,
because it's
I'm
unfair.
part of the-
Palestinian land, like West Bank and Gaza Strip, was
How-
kind of
okay, wait,
allocated for
wait,
these
wait,
people,
okay.
right?
So let's
it's
get-
ridiculous that Israeli people are coming in, buying the property at cheap prices, and saying it's my land now. Like, no, that's just morally wrong. Because the land was allocated for the Arabs. So why are Israeli people occupying it through soft power, such as like buying property there?
I mean, yeah, I'd have to agree with you, right? That is morally, I feel wrong, right? It's a form of ethnic cleansing. Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with you.
That's
I
just
really
straight up what it is.
The settlers are wrong, and they shouldn't do that, right? But I understand where they're coming from. You know, Israel is beset on all sides by countries that would like nothing else but to see every single Jew be killed. You know, they need to be aggressive to a certain extent. They need to make sure that these areas, you know, very, very close to Israel, will not be in Arab control.
But that's also on the other side. You have Zionists in Israel also hoping that all the Arabs within the region are killed. So
Are you
it's the same
serious?
on both
I think you're
sides.
Are you
confusing the
serious?
term here. Zionism means that you want a Jewish state.
Exactly.
It doesn't really mean anything outside that. If you're a Zionist, you don't wish for the death of all like
No. But in the
Arabs or
modern
whatever,
definition
right?
of Zionism, you do. Like, Zionists in general
not true.
want Arabs out of the country. Like, sure, the
You're thinking
the
about,
idea,
like,
the
a-
school of thought might not
You're
advocate
thinking
for that,
about
but
a-
I'm saying right now Zionists want Arabs out or
You're
dead.
thinking about more like a nationalist or a fascist or something like that. I just think you're confusing terms. That's
Dude,
not
I mean,
really.
If you want a Jewish
guys don't
state,
even
what
want
does
it-
that
they don't-
mean? You
these
want
guys
more
don't even
Jews in
want
your
a
state
ground-
as opposed to other religions.
All right, listen. These guys don't even want a ground invasion in the Gaza Strip just because they'll lose a couple, 100 soldiers. That's how much they view Jewish life because it's so little. They don't want to invade Gaza just because they'll lose a couple soldiers. That's how much that's how small the Jewish people are, right? And the fact that you're saying that they want Arabs to die, that makes no sense at all. That's not what the Zionist movement is. The Zionist movement is actually fundamentally it is for a secular Jewish state. It's not some racist or fascist movement. I don't know where you're getting that from.
No, but most Zionists, when they take to social
What do you mean
media,
most Zionists? All right, who?
I mean, it's kind of like when you open TikTok or Facebook or Twitter.
All right,
and you
wow,
look at all
you're
the
getting
Zionists
you're getting your
screaming.
proof from TikTok
I mean-
and Facebook, Krishna.
You don't.
No, I'm saying social media has a massive presence right now. Like the Israeli government in general has taken to social media about their views and beliefs, and a lot of the people who are in support of Israel tend to want Arabs out of there. I'm not saying there's no
Yeah,
extremism on both
I
sides,
remember there
right?
was a Palestinian no, not Palestinian. There was a Pakistani actor. This woman has 1.2 million followers, and she literally quoted Hitler saying basically that I would leave some Jews for the world just to see how wicked they would be, right? And this is a big actor from Pakistan. I mean, there's a lot of
obviously
Okay,
those
but Israel
sentiments
is
are not
also
right,
hiring
but-
actors. You realize that if you go into Israel's I think they have an Instagram page. I forgot, but basically what's happening is Israel's hiring paid actors to act like there's bombings happening within their communities.
I can't
That
speak about
has also happened.
I can't speak about social media. I don't really use it.
No,
But that's
'cause
not
if
really a
you
good
watch,
gauge
these
of
guys
what
are just
people
acting out
actually
bombings
think.
when bombings are not even happening in Tel Aviv. So what
I
is
mean,
happening?
What do you mean it's not
Muslims
happening in
are
Tel Aviv? It's
happening
happening
in Tel
elsewhere near the Gaza Strip border. Just because it's not happening in Tel Aviv doesn't mean. What are you trying to say?
No, but I'm saying they're
but the
paying
fact that they're
actors to
acting
act
like
that bombings
it
are
is.
happening in Tel Aviv. That's ridiculous. Just to prove a point
It's
that Palestine
not
is also
really that
addressing,
ridiculous.
Like, no.
I mean, if the Iron Dome system was not in place, there would be thousands of rockets in Tel Aviv.
I'm sure, but I'm saying
Exactly.
it's wrong to hire actors to fake a bombing.
I mean, I can't speak on that. Like,
I think this is getting off topic. Why do we care about what actors think? We have to get on the main topic. Like, social
Okay,
media
thank
is
you,
kind of
Con.
irrelevant.
That's a
Nobody
good
cares
idea.
what random people have to say.
No, it's just talking about how the government's putting out propaganda to sway public opinion to make
I mean,
them sound
every
justified.
country does that, right? Like, if you look at the U.S., we pump out a lot of propaganda.
Yeah, that doesn't mean it's right. Like,
No, but I mean,
They
I don't
they
think
shouldn't
it's
be doing
really
it.
that important, you know?
Exactly.
In the grand scheme of
Okay,
things.
that's
No, but
fair
the thing
enough.
is, the
That's fair enough.
propaganda is influencing the public, and that's where the problem is coming.
Propaganda from every side influences the
God,
public.
what do you-
All right, it's not really a relevant conversation.
I
like, literally
think I think social media just in general, that's an off topic. I mean, I could go on for days about
I guess
how
the
some
bigger
Israel
point
posts-
that he's trying to get into is that it's the Israelites
Yeah, but
trying to pose
it's-
themselves as victims when
I
they're
understand
really not
that,
in this situation.
but it's on, it's digital right now. Social media, it does pose a threat to society, but it doesn't pose as
No,
much.
it's not
Alright,
just social
alright.
media.
Let's-
It's basically
let's
the
stray-
Israelites' entire stance.
stray
on
away
it.
from-
They're acting like the victims.
It
Let's
doesn't
stray away
pose
from
as
social
Maybe a
guys,
victim
got
in
the biggest power
1948, but
centers.
Israel's not a victim right now.
No,
All right,
I'm
let's-
saying-
Exactly.
let's
Even
stray
though they're
away-
acting like it, they
let's
got
stray
all
away
the
from
power in the
social
situation,
media
and they're
and
still
get down-
acting like they're the victims here.
All right, let's get down to the actual topic. All right, is East Jerusalem and West Jerusalem Palestinian land? Is that whole region Palestinian land?
Not the whole land.
Easily, yeah.
Sorry?
I think it should be split up half and half.
Why?
Because I do think that both sides have the right to live
You
in
think it will
Jerusalem.
stay that way?
I mean, I think.
Probably not.
Okay,
But-
I think a
Because
two-state
the
solution
entire
would have
region is
worked.
essentially like a holy ground, so just splitting it up would not really solve anyone's like wishes, right? Because
Yeah, but-
the
I mean-
whole point is everyone needs to be able to worship there at the end of the day, without interruptions.
Yeah,
So
but
a
if you have
split
one
of the
side
land would not
controlling,
work.
if you have just one side controlling everything, then obviously the other side that's not in control is always going to.
I mean, yeah, that is true, but you're going to be in constant conflict. I mean, look at, after World War II when they split up Berlin, West Berlin versus East Berlin. Look how bad that turned out. I mean,
Look how bad Kashmir turned out. Same time frame
that too. You can't really split up a region and then just.
I'm not talking about splitting
Well,
up. I'm
Kashmir-
talking about
Kashmir's
are
completely
Israelis
different
settled?
because Kashmir's pretty much all Muslim. There's no Hindus here. It's like pretty evenly split between the religion.
Yeah, and in some places, I mean, Israel, it's a lot different than most situations. Like, you take the capital of Jerusalem, you have a Jewish quarter, you have a Christian quarter, and you have a Muslim quarter. It is possible for these groups to coexist peacefully. It's just really hard, Like whoever takes control is going to try to oppress
That's
others.
what's
And I think
always
that's kind
happened.
of the problem, right? That's why I think a one-state solution wouldn't work, because whoever gained power would simply oppress the others. I don't think.
So in a
I
one-state
can see why
solution-
a one-state solution would fail from the Israeli perspective, because if all the Palestinian refugees do come back under some sort of legislation, then the Arabs would be in the majority. So in that case, Israeli people would not be very secure with that resolution, right? So the one-state resolution is a bit far-fetched. But then, what do you propose as a counter solution?
Well, I think I'm with Khan. I think a two-state solution could work. Right?
But how would you divide the holy ground? How do you divide Jerusalem?
Well, I think Jerusalem should stay under Israeli control.
Yes.
I mean, if you looked at the map, right, when there was a possible two-state solution between Palestine and Israel, it was not very simple. It was really it really goes down to the nitty-gritty. But I think in general, everything that Israel holds, Israel should keep, and then for the exception of the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, I think Israel should give up those. In maybe not everything. I think Israel should give up the majority of that away, except for, and this is important, is the distinction for the Golden Heights, because you can actually put artillery pieces on the Golden Heights that could strike into Israel. So I think strategically, Israel needs to keep that area. But besides that, I think they should give those those lands to the Palestinian
So
Authority.
you think it should be like how the UN set it up originally to be?
No,
except
the
for
UN
that one
originally
area?
didn't set
forget
it up
about
that way.
Golan-
The UN gave
Dude,
it a lot more.
Forget about the
land.
Golan Heights, right? That's obviously gonna have to be Israel's land because you have Hezbollah over there with their terrorist activity, trying to set up exactly what you said, trying to set up artillery launches or artillery and missile
Artillery
launchers.
pieces, yeah.
That will give them more access to Tel Aviv from there. And going to the West Bank, you have Jordan, who's trying to, make a deal with the PLO, trying to smuggle weapons into them too. So you have Israel here, and they're surrounded by Lebanon, Jordan. They're surrounded. Egypt. Egypt's not really, that aggressive, but Iran.
Yeah, Egypt and Israel have normalized ties. So
Right,
there's
right.
not as much
There's-
of a threat, but it's always there.
You can't give up territory like that when 3 hostile countries are supplying arms to their proxies in the Gaza, their proxies in the West Bank. It's impossible to just give up land there without. Even if you want to, you got to have some sort of military presence there. Because these
But
guys, look, I mean,
I'm not
if you
hearing
get-
a solution though. Like, what's your solution then?
Oh, it's a one-state solution.
But
But
would
how would
work
that
out?
work?
That's not.
You
gonna
give-
work out, though.
Because first off, you
Well,
realize
I
that there's a
think
one-state solution.
something-
There's going to be a Palestinian majority, right?
I mean, I think something that could work, right, is Israel just controls everything and then just gives Gaza and the West Bank a lot of autonomy, right?
That's
but
what they
not
did.
enough autonomy where
That's
they
not
can
gonna
form
work
their
out
own
either.
army. So strategically, they can
You
stay
don't understand
secure.
how nationalistic Palestinians are. One state solution is not going to work out.
No, I do. That's why I suggested the two-state solution.
Yeah.
But I think it is. I mean, let's be real here, right? No solution here is going to be a perfect one, right?
Yeah.
But giving the West Bank and Gaza autonomy while still being part of Israel is not the worst of solutions.
So what I was thinking is maybe like a two-state solution would work with Jerusalem as kind of like a union territory, which is not really controlled by either country.
that's
but
what the
all of them
UN
have
tried.
rights to it.
That's what the UN
No.
tried.
No, so the UN tried to give a lot more land to Palestine, and it was like, if you saw the map, it was a little weirdly drawn, right? And Israel was fine with that, and I guess Palestine was in the wrong to invade and contest that decision. But I think for a second run, the state line should be drawn in a much more reasonable way to support Palestinians and Israelis, with Jerusalem as like a union territory. I think that would work.
I think
Because the
the current problem actually isn't how Jerusalem is broken up. It's actually broken up in a pretty reasonable way. You have a Jewish quarter, an Armenian quarter, a Christian quarter, and a Muslim quarter. The problem is Israel is allowing Jews to buy territory, land, in the Muslim quarter, but not allowing it the other way around. So I think
yeah.
Israel should give the Muslim quarter a little bit more breathing room, right?
Yeah.
If they had more breathing room, then they probably wouldn't be as violent. I mean,
Right.
that might not be true. They might still, rebel and fight and kill. But I think you need to give them a chance. I think Israel needs to give the people in the Muslim quarter a chance because it is their holy city too. It's a holy city for a lot of people, and you should allow Muslims to live there. As is their right, as is the right of Jewish people to live there. I think Israel just needs to give the Muslim quarter a fair shake and not allow these Jewish settlers to invade the Muslim quarter.
All right. So anyone else? I'll have one more thought, and then we should get on to the U.S. involvement in all this, because I think that's pretty important as well.
So I'm looking at the map right now of Jerusalem, and the major issue right here I see is that the Al-Aqsa Mosque is actually like on the Jewish side, and while the Temple Mount is closer to the Muslim side. So I think that could be a major problem when you're dividing the borders.
That could be a problem, but hopefully, the way I suggest they break this up is that Israel has control over the city. Hopefully, they would just allow people to move to and from. I'm not saying if you're a Jew, you're not allowed in the Muslim quarter, but just don't allow them.
Yeah,
Well,
I
they've
mean,
been handling
theoretically,
it
it should work. In practicality sense, I mean, it's hard to say.
It's already not working. You realize how much they're controlling access.
There's so much.
COVID, they're just always restricting access.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much
but that's-
nationality pride that it's impossible at this point to really, have them create a state or two
Yeah.
separate states.
No. I think
mean, that's
because
the
they're
best
all
solution I can
nationalistic,
come up
that's
with.
why two-state would work. A one-state solution would not work because of all the nationalism. Two-state is like the perfect, solution. It's not
That's what they've been
perfect,
trying for
but
70 years.
That's because the
Yeah.
borders can't be agreed upon.
And they never will. That's why I don't think a two-state will ever work.
That's why somebody has,
I mean,
some third party
I-
has to mediate Jerusalem.
Oh God, I don't want the U.S. to do it.
The U.S. could do it, but
They
they don't.
I
do
don't
that
think it's
anymore.
in
No.
the U.S.'s best interest.
I don't think the U.S.
Yeah.
has the willpower to go into the Middle East again.
All right, let's actually transition on to that. So, everyone in the U.S. has kind of been, bashing on the government for providing support. I think
against Israel, yeah.
Specifically,
Biden approved,
they
of $700 billion.
that was
Yeah, for
before
example,
the
Trump
conflict. That was
administration gave
that
Israel
was
Alright,
before
hey,
Biden
let's-
approved.
$8 billion.
Let's
Biden
take
approved
turns.
Let me
735.
finish my
Turns.
thing. Let me finish my thing. All right.
He approved it before the conflict, by the
Hold on,
way.
Joel,
Just so you know.
chill.
Sure.
All right. Since 1949, the U.S. I think has given Israel around a total of $83 billion. Right. The interest costs borne by U.S. taxpayers on behalf of Israel around like $50 billion. Okay. So this makes the total amount of aid given to Israel since 1949 around $133 billion. All right. In other terms, in some ways, you could argue that we use more of our money to strengthen the military and oppression of the Palestinian people than focusing on, domestic issues within the U.S. and providing aid to the average American citizen. I don't know if
Alright.
you kind of agree on this sentiment, but I don't know. Do you think the U.S. should stop giving aid to Israel?
Yeah.
Or just-
Okay, so
Alright.
if you look at a lot of bilateral conflicts historically, right? No third-party involvement has ever helped. Okay?
That's not true. You think Great Britain and Great Britain and France trying to stop Poland
Okay,
from
that's
being
a
invaded
different
was
story.
wrong?
They were just going at it.
Okay.
They were just throwing like everything they had at each other. That's a completely different story. I'm talking about bilateral conflicts and like territory conflicts and who gets the land, those kind of conflicts, right? For example, Pakistan and Kashmir is the one that's coming. Pakistan and India, when it comes to Kashmir, is what's coming to mind like immediately, right? Like a third-party intervention over there would not help either country, and both
So
countries. That's why I don't agree with
So
it.
basically
Same
a
thing with Israel and
diplomatic-
Palestine.
a diplomatic solution, it would never work.
No, because you can go to the UN and scream all you want. They're not going to help you. They'll probably just redraw the lines. Everyone will be dissatisfied, and boom, war number 2. All right? But the issue here is they need to sort it out themselves, and the US just throwing money at one side is not morally correct. Because there's a lot of damage. For example, when the U.S. indirectly got involved in the Yemen war by giving Saudi Arabia an unreasonable amount of arms, it did not end well. Same thing here. Wherever the U.S. puts their foot, it usually ends up in disaster, and I think the U.S. should really stop with the aid.
All right, now I'll go with my perspective here, right? And I'm thinking from like an American strategic kind of lens, right? In this case, the Middle East is a very, very violent, very, very unstable place, right?
Yeah.
But one of the most stable countries in the region is Israel. And Israel and the U.S. are quite friendly towards each other. So we should try to support that friendship as well as we can, because friends in the Middle East are really quite hard to come by. Right?
I mean, we do have a lot of friends like in the Gulf countries.
Yeah, but they're not friends
Exactly.
we actually like. Like
We-
no
yeah,
one
you
likes
can't- you can't
supporting
you can't
Saudi
depend on
Arabia.
them.
We just support them because they have a ton of oil. At least in
Exactly.
Israel's case, we have some sort of shared ideological connection. We're both democracies. Israel may be a flawed democracy, but they are the most democratic country in the Middle East. So as
that's
a fellow
that's not really the
democracy-
reason why the U.S. is supporting Israel. Israel
yeah.
kind of supports, or Israel is basically like a military outpost for the U.S. in the Middle East.
Yeah, so that's kind of
That's
part of
fair.
it, right? They're stable, right? So because they're so stable, we want to park our military there, because we know our bases aren't going to be randomly attacked by Israeli soldiers. There's
And that's fair from a.
I mean, that's not
from
necessarily
a-
true. U.S. has bases in Pakistan, and Pakistan is not really a stable country. So stability has never bothered the U.S. military from entering a territory. Like
No,
when
never
we had bases
entering,
in
right?
Iraq,
But we
it
would
wasn't
put a
stable
ton of
territory
bases
at
in
all.
Russia, you know? Like we have bases all over, but we would like to park our biggest bases and our best stuff in stable countries, or at least allied countries, you know?
From
So
a strategic
Israel-
point, it makes a lot of sense, but
Yeah.
it's just not right of the U.S. to support this one side.
See,
in this
see, I
conflict.
think what
You-
should be
Well, so
established
what's-
here
what's
is like
the
my
alternative?
Support
argument
one
and
side.
Aldrich's argument is not really
Palestine,
much
we
about
support-
strategy. It's a lot more about
talking
morality.
about the
You
the
know-
people
you know every
of
single
Palestine
gun
being
we would
oppressed
send-
by the Israeli state.
Yeah.
Every single gun we would send to the Palestinians.
Hold on. Okay. Let's let David talk, and then Khan can
All right.
go, and then we can go.
So
from
basically, if we sent guns or support to Palestine, that money in guns and weapons would go straight to terrorists. Like, let's be real here, right? At least when we give guns to Israel, they're not funding terrorists. You know?
No, we're not saying give money to Palestine either. We're saying stay out of it completely.
Well, we can't
Yeah.
stay out of it.
Dude,
We're-
Why-
okay, listen.
why not?
If America wasn't involved in the 20th century, when Israel was fighting 5 to 6 Arab states constantly for 50 years, what do you think would happen to Israel?
No, I'm saying right now. I'm not talking history. I'm saying right now the U.S. should not. For example, in 2019, Trump should not have given them $3.8 billion. Like, why?
They're an
Alright,
ally.
so-
Well, that's not a
kinda
valid
going
enough
off
argument
that-
considering it directly funded oppression of Palestinian citizens.
Right. So, kind of
Like,
going
these
off
guys
that.
are running on scraps, so...
Dude, if Israel doesn't have a strong ally, they would be done.
Yeah. So kind of part of it is because we're so strong, so we're such strong allies with Israel. It encourages the rest of the Arab world.
If the
to
U.S.
normalize
wasn't an
right?
ally of Israel, they would be done. That the reason why they still exist for the past, since 1948 is because the U.S. has been an ally. Otherwise, they would be done.
Yeah.
Israel's
And-
kind of a fake
and-
country in that.
Well,
Yeah, they're like a puppet government.
so
for
is
us in
so
the
is
Middle East.
every
This is
single
this is applicable in a lot
country
of
in Africa, and Israel is obviously not a puppet state, right? We can't make Israel do something just because we want it, right? They have to decide it themselves.
I mean, we can force their hand.
but we
Well, then, if
agree
we can force
with
their
them.
hand, we should force
I
their
don't know.
hand to respect the Palestinian people.
yeah, but
If
already-
we have so much control over them,
But
which
we don't care
don't,
about the
actually.
But
US
the thing is,
doesn't
we
care
don't.
about
we
don't
haven't
have
done anything.
That we don't
Exactly.
have that much control over them. I mean,
it's
they
not,
have.
it's not about control, it's about help.
Yeah.
About what?
It's not they're controlling them, it's about help.
Yeah.
Oh,
Help?
Yes.
Because
Help
we
for
want to.
what?
We want to
Yeah,
help.
but that is
Israel
What do you mean help for
control.
what?
to exist.
If they don't have the U.S.'s help, that means they get just taken over by these other Arab states. Then we basically do have control because we can just say comply with their demands or we won't help.
Well, okay,
But that's
right,
not
at
the case.
beginning-
All right.
Israel is
Look,
is a
Israel,
little stronger than
Israel,
what you're saying.
Israel
Israel is a little stronger than what you're saying.
Look,
They are able
Israel-
to hold their own right now.
Israel, that's because of us. All right. Second of all, Israel is giving
Maybe
weapons.
initially,
Israel is
but
giving
now
weapons to
they're
a
in
lot
a
of people.
position where they
what do you
can
think happened? Why do you
help
think?
themselves.
Why do you think Azerbaijan was so strong in their wars against Armenian or
That was because
Armenia?
of Turkey's help.
No, Israel gave Azerbaijan weapons. We said nothing. They
Part of
have
it, yeah.
Turkey as well.
Again, Israel's arms like manufacturing.
Armenia is a Christian
top-
country.
top
Azerbaijan
class.
is a Muslim country. We're not controlling them at all. We're helping them when they need it. Because there's 7 Arab states, or at least 3 of them are hostile, who want to take over and kill every single Jew in there. You know what the Ayatollah said on live TV? To the UN, Hassan Rouhani also said that they want to destroy Israel. Once they get nuclear weapons, that's what's going to happen.
Joe, I think we're saying
No,
the
that's
same
not gonna
thing.
happen.
The
That's
U.S.
what
doesn't
Kim
have that
Jong-un
much
said about
influence
South
there,
Korea
so
a
they should
million
just stay
times.
out of it.
Yeah,
They got
but,
nuclear-
but
If they
the
don't
Arab
have that much
states
control,
actually
they
have
shouldn't-
backed it up
hold on,
through,
hold on,
like, the
hold
two
on.
wars.
All six of you are talking right now. Let's
I
have-
think we're overestimating the malicious intent over here. Okay, when someone,
You
when a
get-
radical
what?
goes on TV,
Oh, wait,
Here,
let-
listen,
Wait.
let-
when a radical
let
goes on
the
TV
Palestinians
and says
talk, yeah.
they're going to, when the moment they get nukes, they're going to destroy you. That's not true because people are still thinking
What?
the bigger picture. For
Yo,
example, when you
what?
look at Kim Jong Un.
You got Hassan
he-
Rouhani
Hold on,
saying
Joe,
they're
Joe,
gonna-
Joe,
Alright,
Joe,
South
here
Korea,
we
no,
go.
he didn't.
Here we go.
Yeah, let David
Alright.
go, then
Bro,
Aldrich,
Krishna
then
just
Khan.
said you should not
Okay,
take Hassan
no,
Rouhani
Joe, you're
serious.
going
people,
last.
I'm dead.
You're going
people
last.
when people full of hate say something, right? They actually mean it, right? These are not empty threats and like, oh, let's go destroy. It's not like you casually say, yeah, let's go destroy Israel, right? These countries have actually put words behind these. Put actions behind these words, right? Through the several wars that they've gone against Israel in, right? I think it was not the 7 Days War, but the one before that, Six Day War, where every single Arab country surrounding Israel declared war on it, with the main goal to wipe out the Israeli state and the Jews in it. And that was the express intention of these groups, right?
Okay.
These are not empty words.
What do you mean?
These are fighting words, and they mean.
All right. What's your point? What's your point here?
Aldrich, you go. You say your thing if you have anything to say.
I'm asking them what their point is. Yeah, they are facing a foreign threat on a lot of sides.
Oh yeah,
Okay,
so right,
So
Israel is facing
ally?
Annihilation, right? If we and we don't want
Right.
them to be
No, we've
annihilated,
established
so we
that.
should
Yeah, they
support
are
them.
facing a threat on other sides, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I don't get it. Sure, they need an ally, but why is it our responsibility to keep them afloat?
Because the U.S. runs the entire world military, right?
If we are actually keeping them afloat, then we have the influence to get certain demands from them, such as not oppressing the Palestinian people.
No, but that doesn't justify funding the Israeli army in the recent times. Like in the past year, like, yeah, the 6 Day War.
Dude,
Israel
the
was
U.S.
not in
has
the
weapon
wrong,
sales
right?
to everyone. All right, it's not just that they're giving money to Israel.
No, I
They
know,
get-
I know.
they get
And
fi-
I
they
don't
get
support
fighter-
any
they get F-
U.S.
they give
involvement in
F-35
places
to
that
Saudi
are
Arabia.
unnecessary.
They gave F-35s to Saudi Arabia, and they're a worse country than Israel.
No, we
I'm
get
aware.
that.
I'm not supporting that.
Disagree with
in
that
fact,
as
I did a
well.
debate tournament where I completely was talking about how the arms deals with Saudi Arabia is really wrong. Like, it's morally fucked. But I'm just saying, Israel shouldn't be getting funds from America right now because there are people getting oppressed. It's not a responsibility to support one side.
Look, up till 1997, right? The U.S. only gave Israel about, I think, $6 or $7 billion of the total, whatever I said, $133 billion that they've given since 1945 till now. They've only, think about that. They've given what, almost $130 billion since 1997 alone. For what purpose? Israel at that point in 1997 was a pretty developed country.
It
Yes,
still is.
sure,
It's
we
one
could-
of the biggest leaders
Yeah.
when it comes to defense shipments.
So why should
Israel's
we...
arms are bought by everyone around the world.
Either we need to, provide them with help and at the same time influence our ideals on them and make sure none of the stuff that's happening right now is truly happening, because in essence it is a humanitarian crisis if it gets to that stage, right?
Already
And
is at that stage.
Yeah, okay, it is at that stage for you guys. For me, I think, there's been worse humanitarian crises, so it's not there yet for me. But if we give them so much aid, we should just influence our ideals on them. Otherwise, there's no point of us.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah,
if
there's
they
no
actually need
point.
our help that much,
Look,
then
we're
we
just
can
throwing
demand
money
certain
at
things
them,
from
and
them.
we have no
Except the U.S.
returns.
doesn't care about Palestine.
What return?
Yeah.
No,
I
I get it.
Exactly,
They don't care
but they
about
should.
Yeah.
That
I
is
agree.
kind of
They
part of it,
should
right?
care.
The average American doesn't really care that much about Palestine. They care a lot about Israel.
Now
but
they're
that's-
starting to, but that's
That they
only
are
because
starting
of
to, but
social
that's
media.
kind of
That's getting
besides
away
the
from the
point,
main
right?
argument.
But
The
to go
average
back
American
to the
can't point to Russia on the map.
Hold on.
Okay?
Wait.
So
No.
so
Why
we
you
can't
on
really be
Russia?
taking in average Americans.
whatever. That's irrelevant. Going back to the original question, why are we giving aid to Israel, right? And that's because they're our strong ally, right? And we want to keep them as our ally.
It's
right?
more like they need us, not we need them. They're always gonna come to some.
That's not true, man. We use
No,
Yeah,
no,
and if
we
they don't get the
definitely do
help from
need
us,
them.
they're
We
gonna
don't need
turn
them.
their backs and
You
give it
don't-
to someone else.
yeah,
What do you mean you don't need
Israel,
them?
right?
You need a presence in the Middle East, and that's what
just
Israel's
not
giving us.
True, yeah.
I think we have definitely
40% of our intelligence is we outsource it to Mossad.
Huh?
All right, Israel is a strong ally in the region. There's no other country in that region that gives us much support as Israel.
Yeah. So again, right there, we want to make sure they stay our strong ally, because if we don't fill the void, right, someone else does. That means either Iran or Saudi Arabia or China.
Iran is never
or
going to support
Germany.
Israel.
Or
right?
Saudi
What?
might. Saudi might.
No,
Dude, the Russians,
Saudi supports
the Russians don't
Palestine.
give a shit about
and their
anyone
movement.
down there. They'll support whoever they think can strategically
Russians don't have
benefit
that
them.
power.
All
This
Arab
is
nations
becoming an
for-
argument. Okay, we stopped talking about the Israel Palestine. Now this is becoming like a U.S. interest argument. Like,
No,
you're
because
saying,
I asked for the U.S. interest because
Yeah,
I
I
mean, the
think
U.S.'s
it's-
role in it is important because they do have the power to demand
Yeah.
certain things from Israel, which
I
they
think-
aren't doing.
Yeah, I think we're basically done with the whole Israel-Palestine, which one's morally correct and all that. Now the conversation is just mainly should we, as U.S. citizens,
I mean, we didn't even
our-
have a conversation about whether it was morally correct. Everyone was just talking about the states and not about the people.
You kind of were.
Yeah, we were kind of talking about the
We
morality.
touched on it, maybe, but no, we didn't discuss it in depth or anything.
All right,
mean,
let's
you
go to
can
the let's go to the age-old question. Can we all agree that Israel has right to the land there?
Yes.
Not all of the land, but yes.
No,
Some
not
of
Well,
it.
not all the land, of
Not at
course.
all.
but
Which spe-
they,
which
they,
specific-
they deserve
I mean,
to
if you
exist.
see how they got the land, they just basically sided with the UK and just shipped a bunch of Jews over there.
Oh, well,
basically
that's
take it over.
kind of an oversimplification. The British promised
basically what
Palestine,
happened.
right, to like 5 different groups, and then after World War One ended, they were just like, all right. Oh no, actually, I think it was after World War Two. But
No, it was after World War One.
Yeah, and
World War
that
One
land
was
okay.
when it was like
I
a
was
British
right.
It was
territory.
World War One, yeah.
after
land
World
should
War
belong
One,
to
they
Palestine.
basically just said like, Jews, here's the land, and we're out, right? They just kind of left without resolving any of the conflicts.
Right, and
It
do you
wasn't-
think that makes the land the Jews? No, no, it doesn't, because
They
it's
won
not their
wars.
land to
They
give
won
away.
4 wars.
It's not the UK's land to give
No, no, no.
away. You can't just declare
UK
their land.
UK
there are
No, wait,
people
they
there.
won it.
United-
No, the
Britain-
UK won it
Britain had a
over. It was
mandate.
their land
Britain-
to give away.
Yes, Britain had a mandate there. It's there. It was under their jurisdiction. It was
Yeah,
their
they
control.
won it.
And 8 hours before Britain left, Israel declared itself as a state. They got a prime minister, and one day later, all like 5 Arab states went to war with them, and they won. Israel won. So it's their
Yeah,
land.
but that's not really relevant. I mean, okay, let's be real
Yeah.
here. Right? We can
Sure, they
keep
won
going
it
back
by
for centuries and
conflict, but it
centuries.
shouldn't be there.
Before the,
How
before
is it?
the,
How
the
could
current
Dude,
Palestinians lived
the
there,
Jews
there
have been
were
there
Jews
for
living
3,000
right?
years. They were
No,
kicked
no,
out by
the
the
fact
Romans.
is that
They
there are
were
Jews
kicked out by the
in
Romans.
Israel
They
right
came
now.
back.
Bro, I wish I could hear Joel right now. But
I do
can't
kind of do
understand
too.
anything
Yeah,
he's
Joel's
saying.
mic
Joe,
is
you're kind
really
of cutting
tweaking.
out.
All right.
But right, so again, we could play the blame game all day, right? There were Jews before the Palestinians were there, and then before them, that was a different group, right? It doesn't really matter that far into the past. But what the problem is right now is that there's a lot of Jewish people in Israel, right? And there's a lot of Palestinian people in Israel.
That's why I'm saying the
Right.
two-state solution has to be the only way.
Yeah, that's why I support the two-state solution. I don't think Israel necessarily at the very beginning had like a moral, a good moral reason for just coming in and showing up and taking the land, right? But you know, there's been a lot of horrible things.
Exactly,
in the
that's
past.
the point. They have
right?
no good moral reason to just come in and take the land. It's not
I mean,
theirs.
the same thing is true about the U.S., right? In all reality, this should be American Indian land, right? None of us should really be on this land, but
No,
it
you're
is
right.
what it is,
you
right?
are
And
completely
we have to
correct. It
rectify
shouldn't be U.S.
with
land.
what happened.
If you're going by
No,
that
but the
logic.
thing is, the U.S. won the war. See, I support Joel's logic here. Okay, the U.S. won the war, so essentially it's our land. So now, if the Native Americans come and kick us out, we're gonna be like, what is going on, right? Because technically we won the land. The same thing happened in Israel, so Israel won the land. But I'm saying Palestine's like not asking for absurd things. Like, I think a secular state could work.
Israel's not asking for absurd things. All they're asking for is don't bring in arms, don't create your own military. That's all. And they're violating those terms. That's why there's a
Why can't they
conflict.
create their own military?
I mean, they're also saying don't be your own people.
Why can't they have their military? Because it's funded by Iran. It's funded by Syria. It's funded by Jordan.
Okay, well
That's why.
We're not talking about Hamas.
Okay, but
we're
then you
talking
can't
about
just
the
steal their
Palestinians.
identity away. Like
Yeah,
you can't
exactly.
just suppress
That's
their
what
identity.
Giving them
people are mad
passport
about.
citizenship.
About their culture being stripped away from them.
Hold on, Con. What were you saying? You were saying something there, or I might have missed it.
No, I was just saying we're not we're not supporting Hamas here. We're talking about like the Palestinian people and the right to.
I'm talking about the PLO as well. I'm talking about the Palestinian Authority as well.
Yeah, they have the right to govern their own people. They have the right to form.
That's what they did. That's what Netanyahu did. After his previous prime minister, they pulled out troops from the Gaza Strip. They pulled out troops from PLO. The reason why why Netanyahu's gotten more stronger and severe is because they're importing a lot. They're importing a lot of military weapons and missiles from Iran, from Syria. That's the whole problem there. They're saying don't do that.
Yeah, because they feel threatened by the Jewish state that they're going to take over.
They're not.
I mean, they are threatened to a degree, but you can't really discount hatred on both sides.
Yeah, it's like
right?
I mean, it's like
Like, a lot of
people. You have to look on both sides. You see, the Palestinians are threatened by the Jews, and the Jews are threatened by the Palestinians. So that's
kind of the catch-22 of the situation. Each side can't give up, right, or seem weak because they'll get crushed by the other. You know.
See, that's why I don't know. My argument is sort of the fact that we should just let them fight. Like, both of them feel threatened by each other. So if that's the case, then ceasefire will never be an option. Like, it will happen for a time, and then 3-4 years later.
Well, if you let them fight, it's only going to end in one way.
Yeah,
I mean, we have like military contracts and stuff with Israel, so like I really don't think the funding should continue right now.
No, the funding definitely shouldn't continue.
Yeah.
I think what should happen is the U.S. should back out and just let.
But then again, who fills the void, right? Israel's always going to need someone. They're a small state. They need to get their resources from somewhere, right?
No, but they
Who do
have,
they
they have
turn to?
ample
I
resources.
think they
America
have-
doesn't need to
Ample,
consistently.
you
Israel
think
is
there's like
pretty
a large
well-
amount of iron
well off
in
right
Israel?
I think you're underestimating how much power Israel has over the region, David.
Yeah,
I don't
Israel
think,
at the beginning was really weak and needed the U.S.'s support,
Yeah.
but now it's built itself up. to
up
be
till
somewhat
like
strong.
1990s, sure, Israel did need some support from the U.S., but it was
Israel has one of the
decreasing.
strongest
Right now,
armies, one of the best, if not
Wait,
the best intelligence
who had the-
agencies.
Who had the
right?
strongest army? Israel?
No, I said Israel has one of the strongest armies.
No, they don't.
Yeah, they do. The Israeli
they
army
don't.
is known to be very
Their
advanced.
intelligence community is really strong, but not their
Yeah,
army.
Mossad is. What are you talking about?
Israel's
I mean,
army's
just
not
by-
strong, bro.
Israel's
Just by
army
number
are
of
super
personnel,
well
it's kind of
trained.
hard for. It's kind of hard for Israel to match these Arab states just because they're so much larger, right? So
Exactly.
like the army is really well trained, really effective,
Yeah,
but
They don't
they're
have the
not
numbers.
like invincible. They're still.
I mean,
under
no army is
significant threat.
invincible. If you drop a nuke
by-
on anyone, they're gonna die. But I'm just saying.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, right? The threat by other Arab states in the area is quite significant, and they could overwhelm Israel if they played their cards well.
No, I'm saying in the situation that there's like an invasion, but like if there's another 6-day war, right, where the entire like Middle East is ganging up on Israel, sure, America can pull the alliance card and help them out. But I'm saying funding should stop, right? Because funding is not the only way where you represent an alliance. Like America's allied with
Yeah,
the UK, but we don't throw random funds at them at their military.
Well, we kind of do that to all our NATO allies. This is kind of like a little bit off topic, but basically the entirety of NATO is funded by the U.S., right? And it
Yeah.
really should be funded by everyone.
Right.
So we're basically paying for
Yeah, that's exactly right. I
basically
mean,
paying for everyone in
NATO,
NATO's
It's like
fundamental,
Obamacare for the military, bro.
the fundamental rule for
Alright,
NATO
yeah,
is that
fine.
the fundamental rule for NATO is that you got to put 2% of your GDP into the NATO organization. The U.S. and one other country is the only one doing that. The U.S. Until
Okay, I
Trump
think-
came.
I think NATO is just a bad example, and we're going way off topic right now.
Well, he said.
No, I know. He just wanted to prove one point. I don't think
Yeah.
we should just go into how the U.S. is funding NATO and whether NATO is useless or not, like the UN.
I just wanted to show that this kind of alliance isn't unique to the U.S. like at all, right? We basically do it for all our allies. We basically
Yeah,
fund all
right.
their
but
militaries.
do
right?
you agree that they should continue doing it? I disagree with that notion.
I mean, we don't fund the entirety of the Israeli
No,
Defense Force. We just give them some
but we
money.
fund
you know?
No,
most
because like
of
I'm
it.
not advocating just for cancel funding for Israel. I'm saying like get rid of funding for Saudi Arabia. Like that's also ridiculous.
Oh,
but
is
that's
that-
a completely
I
different
bring
topic.
Saudi Arabia to the picture.
Okay,
It's
yeah,
completely
that is a
different
little
topic. I'm
right.
just saying. I'm talking about a blanket like
I think,
reduction of
I think
funding.
that's enough. Last topic. This conflict
Alright.
that we've had recently, okay, over the past 11 days or whatever it is. Do you think it's because Netanyahu just wants to derive all the attention away from, the what was it,
The
4
election.
elections in the past 2 years, and drown out support or bolster up support, my bad, for nationalistic pride, and just kind of forget that this whole election footing thing is just out of its way? Do you think that's why he started attacking Hamas, or
I
just
think-
started instigating it?
I think
Well,
it's
he
part
didn't
of it,
instigate it.
but it is definitely not all of it, right? Like, I think definitely the main reason he's doing this is because Hamas is sending missiles, right? The Israeli army did not start doing airstrikes until Hamas
Nah.
started sending missiles,
Well,
right?
I disagree with that, David. Because
Why not? What's the
the
alternative?
reason why they started sending missiles was because of the Al-Aqsa Mosque raid and because they were kicking out the Palestinians in the Sheikh Jafad neighborhood in Jerusalem.
There were multiple evictions that happened.
Yeah, they're basically.
Yeah, but we're talking about the current conflict, right?
No,
And
but
current
over the
conflict is in
past
Gaza.
year, it's kind of boiled
Yeah,
up
like
to this
they
point.
kind of really ramped up their eviction rates, and when they raided the Al-Aqsa Mosque, that was a big deal, especially during Ramadan.
Right.
Like it was like a big deal, like bigger than it has been before. And then so
Yeah, because in any situation, you can't raid a mosque like a SWAT team.
Right, and I agree with you here. Right, Israel shouldn't have done those things. Shouldn't have raided the mosque. Right. I just thought we were talking about the airstrikes, so that's where I went.
Oh, okay. No, I'm talking about the conflict in general.
All right. Yeah.
Well, it's been slowly building up over the past year, and people are saying that it's under government control, like the government wants this to happen. So we want to talk about maybe why they want it to happen.
I mean, we are hitting the 1 hour mark, so I think we should close up. But anyone... I honestly think that none of us are really gonna agree on something. But I feel like we kind of have like perspectives that are advocating for lack of oppression and like the humanitarian moral perspective, and we have people who are kind of talking about Israel and why America should like continue support. Right. Yeah. So I think we covered like the overall crisis and we all laid out our points, which was good. So yeah, right. Hopefully a lot of people learn from this.
One last point. I want each of you to try and tell me what do you think is going to happen in the future? One by one. I don't care who starts.
All right. I'll go. I think Gaza and Israel will have a shootout, and eventually things will just smolder over. And then I don't think Israel ever is really going to give up Palestine. I think it's too strategically important for them. And I think Israel will just continue to suppress the Palestinian people. Because I think strategically, yeah. I mean, they'll have talks, but nothing will ever come out of them. And I think this current situation where just Israel is kind of just keeping their foot on Palestine will continue.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the Israeli state's going to hold their position and kind of keep their foot on the Palestinians' necks and kind of just...
I think most of us agree with that because, like, when you talk about Israel, they're in complete power over here. Like, Palestine doesn't have anything, all right?
Exactly.
Unless all Arab states come again and kind of support them, they really can't fight Israel. So I think Israel is going to continue the oppression.
All right.
Because they can.
Yeah, the status quo is just going to continue, and just like how it's been like throughout the past 2,000 years, it's just in this specific area, just around Jerusalem, there's just never any peace because it's too diverse, and whichever area or whichever empire is in control is usually just going to remain the status quo for however long they last. And right now, it happens to be Israel and the U.S., and that will continue for a while until the next power takes over.
Continue for as long as those people can stay in power.
Exactly, yeah, that's what's gonna happen.
All right, and the man of the hour, Joel, any last words?
Look, I mean, I think Israel should keep control of East Jerusalem and West Jerusalem. They should have presence there. In terms of what they're doing, like illegally annexing some of the parts of West Bank, I'm not in support of that. I've said that before. In terms of their eviction rates, it does seem forcefully, there's some...
Yeah, but the future...
Okay, let's not get off topic, all right?
Yeah, that's why I'm coming to the eviction rates. That they're annexing those parts, right? I'm saying that they should not do that. They're given lines to do, and they should not do that. And
but do you think it's going to continue?
Probably will, yeah.
So you're saying Israel will slowly gobble up pieces of Palestine?
Yeah, because their interest...
They move Israeli settlers in?
Yeah, they will, because their interest is they're surrounded by Arab states, hostile Arab states, so that's why they're doing this, right? That's why they're trying to take over West Bank. That's why they have a military presence. I'm not saying their practices are right. It's just there's a certain way to go about it, and Israel's not.
So what do you think is going to happen in the future, Ray?
Yeah, what do you think is going to happen?
They'll probably increase their military presence in the West Bank. In terms of Hamas, I think I don't know if they're not going to be the agitators in Hamas, but they should definitely respect some of the people in Jerusalem. It's a holy city. Muslims should rightfully pray there. The Al-Aqsa Mosque is where Muhammad went to pray,
so
right?
Basically you're saying the Israeli people and the Israeli military will continue to have an increased presence in the West Bank. All right,
take over the West Bank. Okay. All right, I think that's a good way to end it. I think the same. If any of you, I agree with everything you're saying. I don't think that Israel or Palestine will ever come to a ceasefire, a true ceasefire agreement, peace agreement, and I think one side will win eventually. At least the West Bank, Israel will take. I don't know about the Gaza Strip.
See, the winning condition is the complete annihilation of one side right now.
I think in the West Bank that'll probably happen if the US continues to fund Israel without actually providing any sort of support or advice, I guess they want to say, on how to stop it. But yeah, other than that, thank you all for listening in. I hope to God everyone has recorded.
Oh,
because
I think I was recording on my phone and I kind of wandered off from the computer.
all right, we'll figure this out. But yeah, it's been a great convo, a nice hour long. This is not our special. Our special is coming up later on. That's probably going to be more heated than this conversation, believe it or not. Stay safe, y'all. Get your COVID vaccines, and we will see you all next time.